Usted quiere,
¿Pero
usted
5 minutos o lo de una vez?
como usted quiera, su clase. ¿Bien? Se me ponga nerviosa, que yo voy a estar. Aquí tiene el micrófono por si lo necesita, igual creo que usted. ¿Está bien? ¿Okay?
Yes, thank you, my darling.
Y yo aquí.
Pero digo, siempre voy conmigo. Una pregunta, fíjate. Algunas áreas tienen links que son los que van al video.
Ok.
Me pasó la presentación, pero ella me lo hizo. Entonces puse en azul, pero ahora, ¿cómo me devuelvo yo?
Mira, aquí hay una persona ingresando.
Ay,
A las personas que se están conectando, bueno, gracias por venir. Vamos a comenzar la clase en breve. En un minutico que estamos definiendo los detalles técnicos.
Well, good afternoon. I think we're going to start. The rest of them will come in any moment, right? So again, good afternoon to my special guests. Today, it is good to send you a message so that you have a certain information, right? This is a course of English 2. That is, this is a course of English, right? This is not a course on literature, but of English, right? And as this is a course of English for our Escuela de Letras, where our students major in linguistics and literature mainly, that is the context that they have, right? So literature is our main ingredient when working the language, okay? So this course aims at helping the students from Letras to analyze more language, to analyze some texts, to understand, to go beyond mere understanding for more profound comprehension of language, culture, etc. Right? So then we use the literary language, the literary texts, because many of the things that we have to talk about, they already know from previous semesters. They do it in Spanish, right? Usually. So most of the things that we do in English 2 in Escuela de Letras are common knowledge for them in Spanish. Now we try to work in English with some literary text, but again, it is not a course of American literature. It is not a course of literature itself, right? Yes, good. So having said that, I think we can proceed now. And I would need to, I cannot move this. I cannot move it. Right. Wait. It's frozen or something. Thank you very much, darling. So having said that, it is good for you to know then that we can talk about James Thurber, an American author. This is an open class session of English 2. Okay. And so previously, my three friends over there surely remember, previously we have been talking about humor, how humor is constructed in language, right? And we found certain elements that we can usually discuss as a source or as a tool for making something humorous. Incongruity, irony, sarcasm, satire, exaggeration, understatement, wordplay, and my favorite, surprise. When we say incongruity, we are talking mostly about situational irony. Remember? Yes? Where things are not supposed to happen, but they do. All right? Like, say, a police officer who is an expert on weapons, on arms, and he's training a group of students, and he's an expert, right? And suddenly he shot himself in the legs by accident. That is an incongruity. It's not supposed to happen, right? Good. So then all of these elements tend to be in certain types of texts. And for our practice or our study last Tuesday, was it Tuesday? Yes, on Tuesday. We used as an excuse the fables. And again and again and again and again. Wait. I'm not playing music. Go ahead. Thank you. What setting, no? Set the professional audio or audio setting. Should I sing? Am I supposed to sing?
No. Ahí está tranquilo, no se preocupe. Sí.
All right. All right, good. Okay, well, this is one of the fables that we use on Tuesday. Do you remember? Remember this fable? Of course, it's Aesop. Whenever we talk about fables, most of us think of Aesop, the fables that we were taught or read when we were children at school. It is called The Man, or entitled The Man and the Lion. You can also find it as The Lion and the Statue, okay, by Aesop. Remember Aesop was a slave and a worker. And we are talking about 600 to 500 before Christ. So a man and a lion were discussing the relative strength of men and lions. The man contended he and his fellows were stronger than lions by reason of their greater intelligence. He took the lion to the public gardens and showed him a statue of Hercules overcoming a lion. Can you see this, the statue there? Hercules, hello, my dears. So that's Hercules overcoming a lion, right? So showing that the man was superior to the lion. Well, that's all very well, said the lion, but proves nothing. for it was a man who made the statue. If a lion had made it, the man would be under the lion's paw. Right? So the moral is of this fable is truth is in the eye of the storyteller, right? So remember that the style of fables was, it's a short narrative text, it's a very short story. It is frequent that we have animals as the protagonist, that is humanization. And usually those animals represent a type of people, all right? If I tell you about, if I tell you that in a fable, the protagonist is the lion, you will feel that the protagonist is representing people who are very strong and brave, right? If I tell you that it is a rabbit, you might think of people who behave like rabbits because they are very fast, for example. If I tell you about the fox, if a protagonist is a fox, what kind of people might it be representing? Tricky people, sly, we call that as our tío conejo, right? They're very, you know, they can make you a fool, right? Very good, very good. But that was Aesop, as I said, 600 or 500 years before Christ. So I am moving, I'm skipping a lot of centuries and a lot of years to move right to the 20th century. I was about to say to this century, but it is not this century, it is last century. The 20th century has already gone. So, are you from this century? Were you born in this century or last century? Say the truth. That century, you're from this century. When were you born? This century, sure? Yes. Yes. 20th century? Are you from 20th century or 21st century? Which year were you born? Really? Oh, you're a baby. What about you? What year were you born? You're the 20th century. You're the last century. Willie, which year were you born? (1996). Okay. Okay, so we do have people from 20th century here. I am from the 20th century, obviously, right? Not the 19th century, 20th century. Are you from the 20th century, Mariana? You're not from the 20th century? Well, what year were you born? (2000). 2000. Now, is 2000 from the 20th century or 21st century? 21st? Yes. Well, then, you're safe, my dear. I don't know. I do not know. Okay. Anyway, we're moving then from 600 years, 500 years before Christ to the 20th century. Just we jumped, all right? It doesn't mean that there were not fables in all those centuries, but we have come to the 20th century. skipping middle ages and classicism, or classicism and middle ages. We cannot, even though we said we're going to focus on James Thurber, but we cannot go into the works of Thurber if we at least don't mention Ambrose Bierce, also known as bitter Bierce. You know bitter? You know the meaning of bitter? You know? You have any idea? You know bitter? The word bitter, you know that word? No? Chocolate. You have sweet chocolate with milk, and you have bitter, dark bitter, right? As you see me sometimes in your sessions, in your class sessions. Okay, so Ambrose Bierce was also called by his friends bitter Bierce, and you will know why. He was born in the USA, in Ohio, in 1852, and that was the 19th century, and he died, or at least he disappeared, in Mexico, in Chihuahua, in 1914, okay? Among his best works, which people mention, Fantastic Fables, he wrote fables, published in 1889, and one of his most acknowledged works, which is The Devil's Dictionary. The Devil's Dictionary compiles more than 800 lexical items, satirical lexical items. It's only satire in that dictionary, okay? And well, people called it Devil's Dictionary. And he was always angry. Almost always, all right? He, in his works, especially in his fables, I will show you one in a moment, he usually criticized professional incompetence, political corruption, cultural life, materialism, and moral values, especially because he thought that materialism had destroyed any possibility of having traditional moral values. So he criticized the way people behaved in that society, and we are talking about 1889. Imagine what he would feel nowadays in this an Expo Valencia, for example. Right. So he had a type of fables which restated parts of Aesop's fables, in the sense that it was humorous. It intended to be humorous, but remember, humorous, it doesn't mean that you're happy. Okay. The fact that you laugh doesn't mean that you're accepting a reality, all right? So he was always criticizing whatever he had around. That's why they call them bitter, all right? So he rescues some of the ideas of the themes that Aesop also criticized, like materialism and moral values, right? But he had his own style. That is one fable written by Bierce. The Kite, the Pigeons, and the Hawk. And there you have the photographs, just in case you find it difficult with the vocabulary. Okay? The Kite, the Pigeons, and the Hawk. Some pigeons, exposed to the attacks of a kite, asked a hawk to defend them. He consented, and being admitted into the cote, waited for the kite, whom he fell upon and devoured. when he was so surfeit that he could scarcely move, the grateful pigeons scratched out his eyes. Do you remember of anything? Does it ring a bell when I tell you the pigeons scratched out his eyes? Any image, anything that you remember? Anything that comes to your memory? All right. Do you remember the proverb? You can say in Spanish. All right. Cría cuervos y te sacarán los ojos. We can easily think of that. We associate that the pigeon scratched out his eyes. And yes, the proverb in English is raise crows and they'll gouge out your eyes. There is another version, a modern version, raise crows and they'll peck your eyes out. Now that's a crow. Does it look anything like a pigeon? Or a pigeon looks anything like a crow? Exactly. Besides being birds, they have feathers and they can fly. I do not believe that they are so similar. What do you associate the pigeon with? What can you associate the pigeon with? What concept? What idea? That is, the pigeon is a symbol of peace. Very good. Of peace. Yes. Normally, a pigeon is a sweet bird. It's small, defenseless, right? And it usually, if white, represents peace. And the crow usually represents death, darkness, negative things. Remember Edgar Allan Poe? Right, good, good. So why would it be that Beers is presenting the pigeons as similar to crows? Why is that? Notice the capital letters as well, the pigeons, the kite, the hawk, right? As if they were proper names.
Sheep's clothing, maybe it's like that, like pigeons. Yeah, they look like pigeons.
Right.
You don't know.
So you cannot trust them.
Yeah.
Right, right. The tiger dressed in the lamb's in the lamb's clothes, so that you think that it is nice, it is sweet, it is good, and then suddenly you see that there is a tiger or there is a fox, right? So maybe Ambrose Bierce is saying that the pigeons, even though they look innocent and peaceful, might be somewhat dangerous. Notice also that the structure of the text, this is all the text, all right? There is no, once upon a time, there was a hawk, or the pigeons were, I don't know, were drinking water when they suddenly, it just comes abruptly to the beginning, and then the end is like that. He doesn't offer any conclusion. He doesn't give you a sentence or something that you can call a moral, right? So it leaves it like that, so that you, the reader, has to contribute with your own part. So you might have different interpretations, right? I think that for me, at least, it seems clear that it is showing how careful you should be all the time, that you cannot trust even innocent pigeons, all right? And that even innocent pigeons can ruin a hawk, which usually a hawk is superior to pigeons, right? Notice the word coat. He consented, and being admitted into the coat, waited for the kite. A coat is a group, usually a group of people, a small group of people, which is very close because they are linked by ideology, a belief, a party, for example. A political party is a coat, a group of the members of the political party is a coat. A group of witches in the wood is a coat, right? Now, the kites, sorry, the pigeons accepted the hawk in the coat. They accepted him as a member of their group, and then see what happened, right? We never know what the intentions of the pigeons are, right? Why would the pigeons do that? He was defending them from the kite. So what happened, right? Maybe it's their nature, or maybe you just cannot trust pigeons, or you cannot trust people who are apparently innocent, sweet, defenseless, all right? Good. So I like that because it's very short. Notice that the language is very simple, right? Remember, most fables were not created, but they were usually adapted for children. In schools, they usually use fables and do the exercise I gave you on Thursday, on Tuesday, like guess what the moral is, all right? Just giving you the text and what the moral is. So Beers didn't offer any moral, but Thurber did. Thurber, now we are on Thurber. Also born in Ohio, the same as Beers, but then he died in New York in 1961. He was a cartoonist, a writer, humorist, and journalist. He had a very difficult life, right? Because he was playing with his brother when they were children, and there was an accident. They were playing with arrows, right? And his brother shot an arrow and hit him in the eye. So he started losing his sight until by the end of his life, he was blind. And well, besides that, he had a marriage life, which was a total disaster. Okay, so he has the right to be as bitter as Beers, but he was not. I have just mentioned this, the list of works by Thurber is large, it's huge. He wrote so many things. Because in those times, most of the fables were published in newspapers, all right? Usually one day in the week they had short story, fables, and things like that, okay? But he had a book published in 1939, Fables of Our Time, and then a second book of fables, which is Further Fables of Our Time. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, I wrote there because it is a short story which is very famous. Very famous. If you would like to read it, just let me know. I can send it to you, or you can even find it in YouTube, just to listen, right? And it's about 10 minutes. It's very short, okay? It's very short. Of course, fables, again, are short stories. Some of them are longer, some others are shorter. Notice the dates, 1939, 1956. What was happening in the world in 1939? Hey, yes, the Second World War. Yes, and the Great Depression in the United States, particularly in the United States. Yes, there were many things happening in those times. For example, the average income was $1,368 per year. That was good in those times, don't you think? Okay, the Grapes of Wrath was published. The events, the formative events, Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, and the World War. Fashion also changed suddenly, all right? And I'll tell you why in a moment, but it improved by the end of this period. Popular songs, The Way You Look Tonight, which everybody thinks it's the first version is Elton John. No, there was a song, The Way You Look Tonight, in 1939. Over the Rainbow, the one you listen in YouTube sometimes, you listen to it, and well, that is not so new. It was in the 30s. Over the Rainbow by Judy Garland. There was a film, The Wizard of Oz, right? And there was this girl, good. What else was happening in that decade? Well, the president was Roosevelt. The FBI was founded. The Empire State Building opened, and what else? The War of the Worlds was broadcast. I don't know if you have heard about that. Yes. Good. Very good. So, as you see, there was a lot of movement in that decade between the 30th and the 40th. In the 50s, remember, Thurber was from the 30s, 39 to the 61 when he died. In the 50s, I'm just post-World War, the North American society, post-World War, the dawn of the Cold War, Second World War finished, and then started the Cold War. There was the beginning of the Civil War, the Civil Rights movements. Most people, including Winston Churchill, consider United States was the power, the strongest military power. The economy was booming, right? Of course, the war had finished. There were new cars, suburban houses, consuming woods, the clothes changed totally. Now the luxury of the clothes, new fashion. The first McDonald's opened in those years too, okay? But again, there were two things that also marked a certain division in American society. It was the crusade against communism and Korean War, because people had their own opinions, right? So even so, this is taken from the History Channel, right? So if you have the chance to watch that documentary, you will enjoy it. So then, who was really James Thurber? Let's listen to a very, very brief biography. I don't know if this is the moment where I say, Fabiola. I think it is. Let me see if I can copy the link.
Copy.
Where?
Here.
It's so difficult to work.
No worry. Easy.
We had a mouse. Good. Don't go too far, my darling.
I'm here.
Thank you, my dear.
Humor is a quintessential American trait. Facile and reactive, American humor has changed and reinvented itself with every passing century. From the wit of Ben Franklin and Washington Irving to the social satire of Mark Twain. The first half of the 20th century saw the beginnings of the onslaught of technology and its impact on American society. And the man who gave voice to the new style of American humor, reflecting that onslaught, was James Thurber.
As a young boy, essayist and cartoonist James Thurber was blinded in one eye by an arrow when he and his brothers were playing a game of William Tell. From that day on, unable to compete in sports, Thurber immersed himself in a rich world of fantasy. A world that would find an outlet in his unique writings and peculiar sketches. A world that would make him America's greatest and most original humorist since Mark Twain. A world that would allow him to become a fearless observer of 20th century American society. James Thurber was born in Columbus, Ohio, on December 8, 1894. Because of his poor eyesight, he did not fight in World War I, but worked as a code clerk in Washington, D.C. In 1927, Thurber joined the New Yorker's magazine staff. Here he would develop his clear yet unusual comedic style of writing, while commenting on everyday life in the United States. Thurber, with great comic awareness and sensitivity, described the anxieties of the average American coping with society and its newfangled ideas and machines. Thurber's comedic masterpiece of the human condition was his short story, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. In this piece, he captured the fear many men at the time felt toward machines such as automobiles, the dread they experienced from the pressure of their jobs, the escape they yearned for from their nagging lives. Walter Mitty was able to find relief from all these trials and tribulations through his vivid daydream, which he always played the fearless hero.
Wing Commander Walter Mitty, the most feared man in the entire RAF Desert Patrol, clung to the tail of the messenger.
Thurber's style was so original, it has never been copied. though he would influence writers like Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller. But more importantly, Thurber had picked up the mantle of humor from Mark Twain, and in turn passed it on to such humorists as Art Buchwald, Herma Bambach, and Dave Barry. As a result, he legitimized comic short-form writing for newspapers and magazines, a largely American art form. James Thurber died on November 7, 1961.
Did you see the allusion to Mark Twain?
Greetings, folks. Welcome back to my little corner of the library. Today I'm trying.
Thank you. Okay, yes, you see, he is considered as important as Mark Twain in the sense of the construction of humor or humorous stories which seemed innocent, seemed like stories for children. Did you read or heard about Huckleberry Finn? The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer? All right. Whenever you have a chance to read it in English, do it. You will enjoy it a lot, I'm sure. Creo que ya lo vi. Creo aquí para. Okay, so what do we find in James Thurber writings? We find intertextual game, okay, with other genres, resulting in hybrids that borrow motifs and characters from fairy tales, popular tales, proverbs, and other folkloric materials, right? So it is not that he has a unique style of fables and he creates new stories, new characters all the time, right? He combines or he make allusion to other works during taking even Aesop's fables, right? So he makes a great combination of different genres to create his own style of fables. The structure with the epimythic ending is adapted to that of the fable of the late classical period or early Middle Ages, right? He took again the style of the ending, right? The Middle Ages style of ending the stories, all right? So it is not entirely new. It is new because of the evolution of fable, right? But it doesn't mean that it is absolutely new. It is rather a combination of things. Like that, for example. He took the moral statement again, right? Which Beers was, you know, skipping the moral. Well, Thurber rescues the moral, the explicit moral at the end of the story, of the fable, right? So this is The Little Girl and the Wolf. Does it sound familiar to you?
Yes.
What do you remember when we say The Little Girl and the Wolf? Okay, which was Red Hood, Little Red Hood and the Wolf, all right? But of course, when we say the little girl and the wolf, we immediately think of Caperucita Roja, right? Okay, what you have there is not a complete fable, it's the end. She had approached no nearer than 25 feet from the bed when she saw that it was not her grandmother, but the wolf. For even in a nightcap, a wolf does not look any more like your grandmother than the Metro Golden Male Lion looks like Calvin Coolidge. You know who Calvin Coolidge was? The 30th president of the United States. All right. So the little girl took an automatic out of her basket and shot the wolf dead. Oh. All right. Yes. And my friends laugh here because of the element of surprise, the unexpected. All right. The unexpected. She took, and of course, the use of certain combination of words, the word play, which we said at the beginning, diction, the word play, like a wolf does not look any more like your grandmother than the Metro Golden Lion looks like Calvin Coolidge, right? You know, you never expect that. All right. And well, the moral is, it is not easy to fool little girls nowadays as it used to be. Nowadays, okay. So he always gave a moral adapted to those times, but you will see a moral that I'm sure you love. So notice again, the language is not so complex. There are short sentences. The syntax is very simple, all right? Like almost subject, verb, complement, subject, verb, object, right? Combinations of coordination rather than subordination. So it is not really complex, just in case children would read them, right? Maybe you would say, okay, he took an automatic what? We know automatic is an adjective, right? An automatic gun. Is it necessary to say a gun? No, because he said, and shot the wolf there. So the same as in Spanish, the adjective has become the noun, right? When we say una automática, we know we're talking about a gun, right? Good. The fairly intelligent fly, fairly intelligent. I mean, well, yes, he's intelligent. Fair enough, he's intelligent. A large spider in an old house built a beautiful web in which to catch flies. Have you seen a fly caught in a spider web? Every time a fly landed on the web and was entangled in the spider, the spider devoured him. So that when another fly came along, he would think the web was a safe and quiet place in which to rest. You see, again, the idea of the trap of someone is fooling you, right? One day, a fairly intelligent fly, buzz, buzz, the sound, right? Notice the effect of the sound that we talked the other day, the onomatopoeic effect of the buzz, buzz. Okay. One day, a fairly intelligent fly buzzed around above the web so long without lighting that the spiders appeared and said, "Come on down." But the fly was too clever for him and said, "I never light where I don't see other flies, and I don't see any other flies in your house." Oh, that was clever. He would not fall in that trap. So he flew away until he came to a place where there were a great many other flies. he was about to settle down among them when a bee, the yellow and black, that stitches, okay, a bee buzzed up and said, "Hold on, stupid, that's fly paper." Can you imagine Aesop talking about fly paper in the 16th century, 600 years before Christ? No. But now we can talk about fly paper because it's a modern era, right? Fly paper. Hold on, stupid, that's fly paper. All those flies are trapped. Don't be silly, said the fly. They are dancing. So he settled down and became stuck to the fly paper with all the other flies. And you can imagine what happened next. Moral: there is no safety in numbers or anything else. Again, do not trust, okay? But I like this because in those times, remember, they were talking about the war. There was the Great Depression, the financial problems, okay? So they always talked about numbers. And the statistics were the tool of the moment. Everybody would talk about these statistics. Right? All proof of everything was with statistics. The scientific method, prove it, evidence, statistics. And now he says, there's no safety in numbers. I know someone who would like that. There's no safety in numbers or in anything else. All right. So it doesn't mean that because there is a lot of flies or people, they are all right. Okay? And we have said that especially in political matters, in political contexts. All right. When you say, how did they win the election? The majority cannot be so stupid. Well, you cannot trust numbers. Okay. Again, a simple language, short sentences. There is dialogue too, which is one characteristic of fables. All right. So it's almost a perfect fable. I never say perfect. The fox and the crow, again the crow, and again the fox. You remember that fable by Aesop? Right? The crow was having a piece of cheese, and then the fox says, "Oh, you're so beautiful. I bet you sing as beautiful as you are." And then he says, "Ah," to sing on the, ah. He drops the cheese, and the fox. A crow perched in a tree with a piece of cheese in his beak attracted the eye and nose of a fox. "If you can sing as prettily as you sit with elegance," said the fox, "then you are the prettiest singer within my sense and sight." The fox had read somewhere and somewhere and somewhere else that praising the voice of a crow with a cheese in his beak would make him drop the cheese and sing. Notice that. He had read, the fox had read somewhere and somewhere and somewhere else that praising. Where do you think that the fox might have read that praising the voice of a crow, etc., etc.? Where did he read it? Where do you think he read it? You're taking it too literal. You will see, in a moment, you will see where the fox might have read that the crow would drop the cheese. Hello, good to see you. Okay, but this is not what happened to this particular crow in this particular case. Prediction. Prediction. This is not what happened to this particular crow. What can you predict? What do you think will happen? Probably he will sing. No, because we supposedly, if he sang, he would drop, because that is what he read somewhere and somewhere and somewhere and somewhere. But this is not what happened to this one. What did he do? What this crow do? Ate the cheese. He didn't share with the fox. He didn't give it to the fox. Okay, and he didn't drop it. Let's see how your prediction abilities are. They say you are sly, and this is again this is how they continue talking. Okay, this is the crow talking. They say you are sly, intelligent, tricky. Okay, Tío Conejo, right? They say you're sly, and they say you are crazy, said the crow, having carefully removed the cheese from his beak with its claw to 1 foot. All right? He took it and kept it there under the claw, like. But you must be nearsighted as well. Nearsighted? People who cannot see without glasses, cannot see with close, like me. But you must be nearsighted as well. Warblers wear gay hats and colored jackets and bright vests, and they are $1.00 a. That is, you can buy 100 warblers for only $1. So he's talking about another bird, a different bird, okay? That wear gay hats and colored jackets and bright vests. Which bird do you think they're talking about? You can say in Spanish if you remember the name of the bird. A bird who sings. Which sings? They will say, you made a mistake in an adjective clause. Okay. It is a bird. It sings. It has kind of a hat. Color jacket, like the wings are of different colors. Bright vest. Vest is what you wear here, and this is bright. What animal is that? What bird is that? Oh. Well, we call it a woodpecker. This is kind of a woodpecker, all right? And this is an animal that sings. Did you find the translation to Spanish?
The parrot. A
A
parrot.
parrot, you mean, yes, it can be a parrot, but it must sing. It's the kind of, all right? But don't worry. The thing is that this crow now, he is considering bringing or naming another bird, which is $1.00. So insignificant that you can buy 100 warbles for only $1. So he's comparing to other less important animal, right? So I wear black and I am unique. He began nibbling the cheese, dropping not a single crumb. He was so careful of the cheese. And this is the fox. I'm sure you are, said the fox, who was neither crazy nor sighted, but sly. I recognize you now that I look more closely as the most famed and talented of all birds. And I would here to tell you, and I would here to tell you about, and I would hear you tell about yourself, that I am hungry and must go. That is, oh, I would love to hear you telling me about yourself, but I'm hungry, I'm sorry, I have to go. This is the fox, which is like, any prediction? Any prediction? What's going to happen now? The fox is leaving. It seems so. It seems like the crow is just going to eat his cheese and that's it. Tarry a while, said the crow quickly, and share my lunch with me. Now, like saying, now I have a chance to talk about me. All right. Now I want to talk about myself, and I'm going to share my cheese. Do you know anybody like that? Have you never met anybody like that? Okay. Whereupon he tossed his cunning fox to the lion's share. Fox, the lion's share of the cheese. The lion's share is an expression that you will find a lot. The lion's share means the biggest part of something. All right. If we have a cake, for example, right? We say que reparte, le queda la mejor parte. Well, that la mejor parte is the lion's share. All right. So that is what we call it in English, the lion's share. Okay. So now imagine the crow is giving the fox the lion's share. He's giving in more cheese than he was planning to, right? He said, what? A ship that sails without a crow's nest say no to doom, he said. Bars may come and bars may go, but crow bars last forever. I am the pioneer of fight. I am the map maker. Last but never least, my flight is known to the scientists and engineers, geometrists and scholars as the shortest distance between 2 points. Any 2 points, he concluded arrogantly. Right? He preferred not to eat, but to have someone to tell him about himself with arrogance, right? Again, don't you know anybody like that? And this is how it ends. Oh, every 2 points, I'm sure, said the fox. And thank you for the lion's share of what I know you could not spare. And with this, he trotted away into the woods, his appetite appeased. That is, happy. He ate, no more hunger. Leaving the hungry crow perched forlornly in the tree, which means or angry, and upset, sad. Okay. The moral. Have a look at that moral. I'm sure you will enjoy it. 'Twas true in Aesop's time and La Fontaine's, and now no one else can praise thee quite so well as thou. No one else can praise thee so well as thou. Thee and thou, you. All right. Do you remember? Do you remember of anybody with that written form? Anything that comes to your mind? Who wrote like that? Have you never seen that? Twas for it was. Twas and thee and thou. No? Not familiar to you? That's Shakespearean's writing. In any of Shakespeare's sonnets or plays, you will see that. Twas for it was, and that and thee and thou, okay? Which are the second person, right? Yes, yes. So notice how the moral this time makes an allusion to Aesop himself, to La Fontaine, okay? And it is written with Shakespearean's language, right? That is what I was telling you some minutes ago, that he had this intertextuality style, right? Bringing some other authors, some other themes and characters from other genres, okay? And this is yes, this is the last. This is the last fable I will play for you today, but there is no, this is not the last, this is the before the last, okay? But I'm sure you will enjoy. I'm not going to tell you anything about that. Just listen to it. Listen to this professor speaking and
Hello and welcome to all viewers on Live by FNP Media. This is the Shah family at your service. Evidently, a considerable number of you are writers or aspiring writers, so we assume that a series of short stories would be best for your edification. The first two stories are by James Thurber, the celebrated American humorist who died in 1961. And the third is an allegory on the biblical story of Noah, written by Orson Welles. The third story is self-explanatory. The first two by Thurber, at first glance, seem like children's fables, animal stories. They are, in fact, on deeper inspection, fables for grown-ups. And it would be very interesting for an aspiring writer to try and study through these stories, each of which has a little moral at the end, how it is possible to make an overt political statement without putting your life on the line. Something like our very own Mr. R.K. Lakshman. So here is the first story, which is called The Owl Who Was God, by James Thurber. Once upon a starless midnight, there was an owl who sat on the branch of an oak tree. Two ground moles tried to slip quietly by, unnoticed. "You," said the owl, who, they quavered in fear and astonishment, for they could not believe it was possible for anyone to see them in that thick darkness. "Who? You too," said the owl. The moles hurried away and told the other creatures of the field and forest that the owl was the greatest and wisest of all animals, because he could see in the dark and because he could answer any question. "I'll see about that," said the secretary bird. And he called on the owl one night when it was again very dark. "How many claws am I holding up?" said the secretary bird. "Two," said the owl. "That be right." "Can you give me another expression for that is to say, or namely?" asked the secretary bird. "Two," said the owl. "Why does a lover call on his love?" asked the secretary bird. "Two," said the owl. The secretary bird hastened back to the other creatures and reported that the owl was indeed
the greatest and wisest animal in the world, because he could see in the dark and because he could answer any question. Can he see in the daytime too? Asked a red fox. Yes, yes, echoed the dormouse and the French poodle. Can he see in the daytime too? All the other creatures laughed loudly at this silly question, and they set upon the red fox and his friends and drove them out of the region. Then they sent a messenger to the owl and asked him to be their leader. And the owl appeared among the animals. It was high noon and the sun was shining brightly. He walked very slowly, which gave him an appearance of great dignity, and he peered about him with large staring eyes, which gave him an air of tremendous importance. He's God, screamed a Plymouth Rock hen, and the others took up the cry. He's God, he's God. So they followed him wherever he went. And when he began to bump into things, they began to bump into things too. Finally, he came to a concrete highway, and he started up the middle of it, and all the other creatures followed him. Presently, a hawk who had been acting as outrider observed a truck coming toward them at 50 miles an hour, and he reported to the secretary bird, and the secretary bird reported to the owl. There's danger ahead, said the secretary bird. What? Said the owl. The secretary bird told him. Aren't you afraid? He asked. Said the owl calmly, for he could not see the truck. He's God, he's God, cried all the creatures again. And they were still crying, he's God, he's God, when the truck hit them and ran them down. Some of the animals were merely injured, but most of them, including the owl, were killed. No, you can fool too many of the people too much of the time.
You can, right? What I think it was, I don't remember if it was Roosevelt. I don't remember the name of the politician, the American politician, who say you can't fool people for too many people for too long or something like that, right? Well, Thurber believed that you can fool a lot of people for a long time, for all the time, right? That's a modern perception, and that is the modern version of the, what did I do? I was where I was supposed to be. It's a situation of irony. And the unicorn, and this is the last one. The unicorn in the garden is probably the one of the most famous fables of Thurber. I don't have the text, so you can read it here. You will just listen to an interpretation by a professor. Okay, I can just tell you very briefly about the plot. This is a marriage, a couple, right? Remember, Thurber had a terrible marriage life. It's just a chaotic. And well, he in this very short story, the unicorn in the garden. It's the husband wakes his wife and says, "There's a unicorn in the garden," and the woman, "What? Unicorns don't exist." But she was really secretly happy because she saw that that was the opportunity to send him to a psychiatrist clinic and get rid of him. Send him to the psychiatrist clinic, right? Or hospital. And so he said, well, and she was planning to call the police, right? Which she did, to make them know that the husband was booby. Booby. Booby is a word, an expression for several things, but one of them is, okay? And then when the police came and she received them on the door, she says, my husband told me that there is a unicorn in the garden. And you know what happened? The police thought that she was coming crazy, not her husband. When the husband came, they asked, did you tell your wife that there was a unicorn in the garden? And he says, what? No. Unicorns are fantasy creatures, right? So this time it was his wife who went to the psychiatrist hospital. In those times, I think, when was the year of this famous therapy with electroshock that they were treating psychiatrists or psychological patients? Yes, for the same woman. So psychiatrists, psychiatric hospital were full of people because they were implementing the new therapy of electroshock. All right. And so anybody who would be anxious, nervous, depressed, or was considered a patient, a candidate for those. So the psychiatric hospital were like this. Okay. And most people, you know, took advantage of the situation and sent these what's El Conde de Montecristo. Have you read that? You're too young. No, you're too young. Forget it. I will give you a summary next time I see you. Okay. So this is the opinion and say the evaluation that a teacher, that a professor gives about that fable. This is comments for EFL students. So comments for people like you, my children, you EFL students, English as a foreign language students. There it goes.
Hello, my name is Michael Merrick. I have some comments for you about the story, The Unicorn in the Garden by James Thurber. Unicorns do not really exist. In the stories about them, they are magical creatures. We say that they are a myth because they are not real, but there are many stories about them. A unicorn usually looks like a horse, but with a single straight horn in its forehead. Here are some pictures of unicorns. They are often shown with young women. Some stories about unicorns say that only innocent young girls can tame a unicorn because unicorns are so good and beautiful. In the story, the husband tricks his wife into sounding like she is crazy, so the doctors will take her away. The moral of the story is a joke. It's funny because it combines the meaning of different words in a surprising way. A booby is a kind of bird, so of course it can lay eggs. But in America, booby also sometimes means someone who isn't very smart. And booby hatch is a word we sometimes use for the hospital where they take crazy people. So the moral starts with a saying that is familiar in the United States: don't count your chickens before they are hatched. James Thurber makes a joke of this because his moral, don't count your boobies before they're hatched, means don't think you know who is crazy until they take someone away to the hospital. And that is what the husband did. His wife wanted him taken to the booby hatch, but he got the doctors to take her instead.
You see, again, the idea of wordplay.
Hello to each and every one of you. If you are new to my channel, let me.
So again, we find the idea of wordplay as one tool to construct humor, the unexpected, all right? Every time you laugh was because you were not expecting that, all right? So it sounded like that. Also, because most of these stories are similar to the ones that we were told when we were children, all right? So we find them expressed by Thurber in these terms. So it is funny, which doesn't mean that we accept it, that we are pleased by the situation, right? But by this, they highlight things, different themes, like the family, the home, politics, right? And human behavior above all, right? Remember we said about Aesop last session that they used satire to foreground the stupidity, to criticize and make fun of the stupidity of groups of people, right? Usually represented by an animal, right? So they constructed social representations in those fables. This is not to be watched now. This is, I highly recommend you to watch that interview. It is jewelry because it is himself talking, right? Whenever you find an author being interviewed, watch the interview, right? Because it is himself evaluating his own work, okay? Or explaining things that we wouldn't imagine. So if you find, of course, I will send you the link to your M7. I can send this same presentation so you can have the links and see at least this interview, because it is about 40 minutes. So do it on Sunday. On Sunday, it's about 40 minutes, right? Do you have any question, any comment, anything you want to know, anything that you want to add, anything that you want to comment on? We have some minutes yet. You want to ask me a question? If you want to ask me a question, feel free. I mean, everybody's free now. Just say what you think. Don't be afraid. Darling? I'm gonna kill you. Sol Ángel, and then you. Up. As you say every day, it's rather complicated. No, well, I'll tell you. I have worked with fables for quite some time now, right? And I have chosen fables because they are very short narrative texts and they are very useful for me to present to my students, all right? First of all, it was a pedagogical reason, right? Not to teach them moral, but to show them the language, right? And then I started noticing that there were different versions of the same fable. And then I saw that we have our own proverbs, which are very similar to them. And I have told them that in the classroom, that maybe it's like a matter of values, all right? Because they have, I don't know, when the famous raining cats and dogs, that expression, raining cats and dogs, for us, it is a palo de agua, all right? So we value the rain as a palo, something strong, something aggressive, all right? But in, well, say, more British cultures, they think of cats and dogs, maybe because they're noisy. So for them, they value the rain because of the noise. We value the rain because of yeah. So I said, well, there is an element of cultural thing. And I was telling them on Tuesday that studying humor is never easy, right? Probably, perhaps in fables, and you can see even children laughing, right, because of the unexpected. So studying humor then is easier when you show these linguistic elements in the text, which is very short, and you can help your students see the complete thing, the complete work from the beginning on how it starts, how it develops, and how it ends. That's something you cannot do, for example, with Ernest Hemingway. No, Hemingway, no. Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde, right? That's so acute humor, but then I cannot bring an essay, all right, because we never finish during the semester. Oh, the importance of being earnest, that we can show some extracts. But with fables, we have the advantage of having the beginning, the end, and the moral, right? So you can interpret that. Now, the evolution of the moral makes it even more interesting to see how, and I have been emphasizing that from the beginning, from Aesop's fables in 1600s, 600 and 500 before Christ to the 20th century and going on, and how he has influenced other people, right? One of his books has been made a series, a TV series, I think. There is a film. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is a film too. They made a film like in 1947 or something. They made a film too, right? And you can find elements of fables in different films like Shrek, Animal Farm by George Orwell. This film, Tangled, Enredados. Did you see Enredados? Watch it again. And this time, notice the elements of fables, the incongruities, the intertextuality you have in that film is amazing.
That's right.
Yes, 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 of course, yes, yes. So watch all of them, and you have a question.
Was not sure if you're seeing this. It was say that I found the fable of the fox and the crow, this particular version, very interesting because of how they took it. It's a personal flavor, but in a more spicy way. comparison to the classical to the original version, because I think my personal perception is that it ended up being kind of the same, but a little spicier. Because at the end of the fable, you can see that the end was pretty much the same. The crowd ended up sharing most of a part of the cheese, and still ended up feeling hungry. So it's similar, but a little more complex, and that's a really good version of it. I've never heard it before. It was stoked because it's the same, but a little spicier and even more disappointing for crowd, which I know the same way. Hungry. Sorry.
Of course, because it is like saying after so many centuries, some people will never change. There will always be this arrogant people who want to talk about themselves all the time, all right? And you start telling them or sharing with them any experience and say, oh yes, well, I remember when I was, and you say, there we go again, all right? So it's, and that's why he says, how he finishes, "'Twas true in Aesop's time," that is, in that century, and La Fontaine's later on, and still today, no one else can praise thee quite so well as thou. So if you are arrogant, you will feel that you are the best in the world, and nobody will ever see you as good as you think you are. All right. So this adaptation of classic fables is what makes me find it more interesting, right? Because from discourse studies, when you see the social representations and how the human behavior seems to have changed, seems to have evolved, but then again, there are always this human flaws, right? We're not perfect. We're supposedly, we have, evolved. We are in the 21st century, but still, it was true in Aesop's times. It is true. It was true in La Fontaine, and it is true still now, still today. All right. Thank you.
¿No cree usted que sería la clave que tenía Thurber para que sus fábulas sean tan creativas?
His times. Well, first of all, he was an illustrator, right? And he had the commitment of writing for a newspaper column or every week. So he had the discipline. Second, he had lived a difficult life that might have given him enough experience and time to evaluate human nature, right? This conflict with his wife, I would recommend you to read any of these biographies, right? So he had a lot of experience and chance to evaluate and re-evaluate human experience, right? And of course, he had a great command of the language. You may have a lot of experience, but if you don't know how to put together two sentences, he had that command of language. He knew how to play with the words. He had a cultural background that let him share and choose the exact elements from other authors, from other works, right? So to combine them so perfectly. And then there was the time, his society, the time when he was living, right? This Second World War, the Depression, the changes in American society, right? Most of the works of authors are the product of their own environment, their own experience, but also what is around them. Okay, so I think that is a key element for Thurber, for him to be so influential still nowadays. Thank you very much for your question. It was a good question. Any other question? Any other comment? You, ooh. You too. Well, don't forget about all this. We'll continue talking about fables because one of your next tasks is to analyze a fable all on your own. You can work in pairs, but this time you will do it without my help. Right? You just take all of the elements we've been talking about recently, choose any of Thurber's fables. You might choose Aesop, but why not do it from Thurber? Or if you find a new adaptation of the 21st century, okay, we can discuss it. All right, so we have a deeper analysis of Thurber's works. Now you know Thurber, you know what a fable is, you know what the humorous devices you can use and find, right? So we'll discuss that on next session. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Teacher,
I
will be the next session.
And open with me. No, I won't have this another one. No, esta es la. Oh, my darling. Yo no tengo otra clase abierta durante este semestre. All right. Pero la próxima es probable que tenga varias. Ustedes me escriben, yo estoy pendiente. Thank you, my dear. Thank you for coming.
Aquí tenemos algunas personas conectadas también.
Oh my God.
De todas maneras, bueno, si no tienen ninguna pregunta por acá, les agradecemos también por haberse conectado a esta sesión de hoy. Y esperamos que hayan disfrutado la clase. Gracias, Karen. Saludos.